hope we can generate as much enthusiasm and energy as that. Thank you all for coming back from coffee break and for giving us your attention. We appreciate your time, and it means a lot that you're here. I guess I would like to give it to the panel to let themselves introduce themselves and give them a little bit more information instead of me trying to hack it out.
Hello. Good morning, everyone. Well, first of all, thank you for having me today. I'm John Carlos. I lead strategy and technology at EuroLeague Basketball, which includes several business areas, but essentially, and one of its pillars is its data. So my mission is kind of connecting the dots between data, strategy, and technology, and I guess that's why I'm here today.
Daniel Dumig, co-founder of the Mother Teresa Innovation Ecosystem and the venue Barcelona. What we do basically is, it comes very handy with the title that you have of this panel, is like we help organizations in their tech and in their strategy to really build a strategic advantage via low cost, high impact, and high speed innovation projects. We also lead the venue Barcelona, which is the innovation hub in collaboration, an initiative from the city of Barcelona and Barcelona Serveis Municipals in the Olympia Stadium. And is currently, I would say, the largest innovation hub worldwide in music, sports, and big events. In the Olympic Ring with the Olympia Stadium and the Palau Sant Jordi, which is a bit like, for the ones who don't know, the Madison Square Garden of Barcelona. So I'm happy to be here and happy to talk a bit about innovation in sport organizations.
Morning, everyone. I'm Aitor Jimenez. I'm the Chief Innovation, Strategy, and New Business Officer at Bascone Group. So let me explain briefly what is Bascone Group. We are a private and multi-sport entity based in Vitoria. We own 3 different sports clubs. We have 2 football clubs. One is Deportivo Alavés, playing in the first division in La Liga. And we have another club in Croatia, NK Istra. It's a club we bought in 2018 and again playing in the first division. And for us, it's a club to detect talent in football and in order how we can detect this talent and incorporate in our discipline in Deportivo Alavés. Apart from that, we have a club in basketball, Baskonia, one of the founders of the EuroLeague and play in the ACB. But again, as we are a private sport club, multi-sport group, our mindset is totally focused in business. So it means that we have another projects. We have our own private university, and this is the 3rd year of this university, focused on sports, technology, and health and well-being, and we have close to 800 students. Next year, we foresee to have 1,200 students. Apart from that, we have our own training and leisure facility. It's close and similar to a metropolitan one here, because you are in Barcelona, and it's very, very similar to this kind of clubs. We have more than 6,000 members of this facility, and we have, again, another multi-sport activity. We have 10 paddle courts, we have a fitness area, we have 2 restaurants, and we have, and then we are going to explain that afterwards. And from the innovation perspective, this facility helps, through innovation perspective, to develop projects among that football or basketball. And the last project we have is a residence. We have already launched this project in Victoria too, because all these projects are located in the same area. It's close, this residence, to 300 beds and with 2 football fields. And then we have the factory project, and then the factory is our innovation and new business center, and responsible to develop all these projects connected to innovation and technology.
Great. Thank you all. And I'm really excited. We've had some nice conversations leading up to this panel, and I think there's going to be a lot of nice information and knowledge to share with all of you. I feel today I'm going to take maybe the perspective of wanting to understand the mindset and the opportunities to collaborate with organizations like this. So whether I be a startup founder or if I was in the audience wanting to be a partner potentially with them. In saying that, when I look at this title, I think, okay, data strategy and tech integration for me is about measurable added value. And when I think about added value, it's there's a 10-year horizon, working backwards 5, 2, and then your quarterly goals. And I guess maybe, and JC, since you're sitting next to me, if you could give us a little bit of a vision, maybe of the purpose of the EuroLeague, or at least what you're involved in, for the 2-year plan, the next 2 years, and maybe work back a little bit how that relates to what you guys are doing now.
Yeah, so recently we defined our new technology strategy for the next few seasons, including an implementation roadmap. And in the end, I would say that the underlying principle of it is making technology an enabler for both business growth and operational excellence. So that means that we need to structure the technology function properly. With a proper governance model, ensuring that it can serve both the league's needs as well as our clubs, because we also act as a consultancy in business, and we are starting to become in technology for our clubs. So first of all is getting the right model to enable operational excellence, so streamlining processes, optimizing the resources that we have, and on the other hand, we kind of balance these with enabling business growth, as I said. So here we have 2 new pillars that we have defined. The first one is structure around data. As I said, it is really key for us. So what we're building as part of this new strategy is what we call a unified data platform. So that essentially all the data that we have and we own is under the same roof, which of course gives a lot of opportunities in terms of scale, integration, and so on. And that's a wide spectrum of data from business, so financials, and understanding our performance, reach, awareness, brand health, including as well fan data, so that we can know who they are, personalized experience for them, and better serve them, and at the same time monetize. And the third one being stats of the competition, which is also really valuable for some partners as well as for the same fans. So that's key for us to own this. And then the other one is venue technology. So in the end, to enable or to make sure that, let's say, the product that we have is of the highest quality, remains authentic, but at the same time we keep on innovating and delivering the best experience across different touch points, so physical and digital or TV and so on.
Okay. Daniel, Aitor, do you have anything you would like to add to the purpose or?
No, I think like from our standpoint, what I can share is like from the projects that we are working also with sports organization, but with other companies. I think you highlighted exactly like the two ways. There's like a thing to see. Okay, right now, if you see the topic of this speech today, data and strategy, and then also the integration is like, okay, what can we do in a sports organization to provide like operational excellence? Which right now you all know about AI. They're all tools that right now you can make your organization more streamlined. But then I think there is another challenge, and you had touched on this, like the fan engagement piece, which is, and also to say, okay, how can I give value to the stakeholders that put the money into my sport organization, which is the fans, which is maybe the investors, which is, let's say, the fan experience after all, and the sponsors that you have behind. And I think there is a couple of people that I already met in the room that work for big sports organizations, clubs, and they, you want to convince a big sponsor to sponsor your club. Yesterday I had a conversation with, I see him here from FC Bayern Munich, my friend. So I think also they have the same challenge like any other football club, like also El Baskonia Alaves, is to say, okay, what do I put into my pitch deck as a club that stands out and that creates extra value, and that maybe this guy is not doing, or maybe that this guy is not doing. And there I think there is a big challenge, and there is right now I would say a blue ocean still, that we work on with a couple of organizations where you really can work on value propositions, and then you can work on a data that ends up in your data strategy, like I said in the intro, that ends up in your strategy, and then creates this kind of incremental value for your organization, really providing your unique selling proposition for your sports organization so you can stand out in something at least.
And I think it's important to highlight that too. It's something we talked about before the panel. Like it's super important for organizations, especially startups, to understand that value proposition and be able to communicate it so where they're solving the problem for whether the club or the league or their client. And maybe they're not as effective sometimes at that. And that is the probably most important thing, besides the team, in my opinion. Sorry, Aitor, do you?
Let me add that, for example, in order to incorporate these big topics like data, strategy, and tech, is the main challenge is how you can integrate properly in your own organization. Because I think that here the main challenge is having internally the resources to do that, having internally a specific department to interact with the ecosystem, and how you can detect these top-notch technologies, how you can interact with startups, with tech corporation in order to create these strategic alliances, these strategic frameworks to develop this knowledge. And for example, in our case, through the factory, as I explained before, it's our innovation center. We have defined 5 different verticals in order to have or have this message cleared or send this message to the market. So the first one is health and well-being. For us, as a sport multi-group entity, is essential to detect and to create knowledge in performance-wise and how we can develop projects connected to nutrition, hydration, in order to be better as a club. The second one is what we are talking about sport tech solutions, and here is a big boss we have this goal to detect these kind of new technologies that, for example, artificial intelligence, what happened and how we can incorporate again properly into our house. The third one is about fan engagement, and this is a big topic because we move sense. We have big communities, and it means that we need to create a channel to interact with our fans, not only in a match day situation. The fourth one is about smart stadiums, how we can incorporate new technologies to improve this experience. And another big goal in the sport industry is we manage facilities, but what happened in this non-match situation? Because we only have 40 plus matches in basketball, 20 plus matches in football. What happened with the rest of the days? We need to monetize these stadiums in order to increase and to have a real impact in the P&L of the organization. And the fifth pillar is about education of the future, and it's totally connected with our university project and how we can define new projects in education that can insert properly in our organization.
Okay, so this is my 4th year doing a panel similar to this with this topic, and the first year is we were talking about the metaverse with FIFA and about the holistic fan experience, and the second year we were with Barca with NFTs and talking about co-creation with the fans, and the last year it was Juventus and Sevilla talking about sort of the technological integration that can be done between the lines versus outside the lines, if you will. And for me, it keeps coming back to the same thing, and I'm glad you guys all, and I figured you would mention the fan experience. And I guess tech companies and drug dealers always talk about their consumers as users. But for sports, and that's why I love working with sports, they're fans, they're fanatics, right? Our consumers are fanatics. There's a hardcore, consumer patterns that are just not like anything else, maybe politics. So I guess my question is, first, would you agree that fan experience is the fan-centric experience is at the heart of when we talk about integrating tech? And then more than anything, can we define the audience a little bit, and how do we, and this will be my last part of it, how do we look at the operational efficiency or balance integrating technology for operational efficiency to the unique fan experience? Yeah, and whoever wants to jump.
Yeah, so to your first point, I think having a fan-centric mindset remains key. And in the end, data and technology should be just an enabler, should be just instrumental to serving what fans constantly because demands constantly evolve. So the landscape is not the same as 4, 3, even a year ago, and we now have more tools. But to me, it comes first the business side, right? So you should have an objective, and you should use new technologies to serve these business objectives, to serve this fan experience, and not the other way around, because otherwise it's pointless. It happens the same with data. Unless you have a clearly defined analytics strategy or a data-driven decision-making culture, you can have tons of data, but they will be pointless because you won't be able to actionate these, to make decisions based on these, and ultimately, for instance, personalize the fan experience.
Maybe to add, I think like there was a very important point to answer to your question, a very important point from Aitor, which is basically, you said like, okay, which is at the forefront right now, but I think like you need the operational excellence, like you say, to enable the fan engagement. So imagine right now when you talk also about, Aitor talked about, okay, how do I get the most money out of my assisting venues? Or how, then is also imagine you cannot provide fan experience if nothing is happening there. So obviously you need the operational experience. I mean, we talked about, we can, like right now you can see it in the Olympia Stadium where we have our innovation hub. FC Barcelona is playing there, but also there is a lot of concerts happening. So you have to get the pitch in, the pitch out, the pitch in, the pitch out. So if you don't have a solid process and like also innovative process into place to make this time frame shorter, then you can use your pitch less time, then you can monetize less, then you can have less fan experience. So I think first of all you have to have the groundwork done, so you also have your, let's say, your profit centers organized, and then you put the layer on fan engagement on top, because then you have your playground defined and well organized and can scale from there.
Yeah, I will add that in order to define an accurate strategy on that, I think we don't have to be intrusive. So it means that, for example, for sure we want to get data from our infrastructure, from our fan base, but if we don't do it in a smooth way on that, you may find here some difficulties to get a valuable data of that. So for example, because everyone is thinking about we need to have a CRM, we need to get data, we need to create this strategy behind this data, but again, we don't need or we don't have to be intrusive on that. And another point to add here is that as we are football clubs, and another thing is we need to control the process. So it means that, for example, try to mind what happens if we lose the match. We are opening a channel for our fan base to insult us, no? and other things. And I think that, for example, in that case, the control of this data is essential for the clubs.
Okay, I want to go a little bit deeper based on that. Last year, we were talking about the difference between relevance and integrity, and how you balance those two when you are integrating a new strategy into, whether bringing a new tech or a new campaign. For example, like with Barca, they brought in NFTs, and it was a large risk because there was so much, and it goes on to what you're talking about with trust. And I'm just wondering how much of that conversation happens. Of course, your CFO looks at the bottom line. But then also your job with the strategy is how can you create that 2-year vision, and how do you get to there without, you have to pay for it, but you also have to keep the fans in the center.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think this relates to your first question of demonstrating the value short term, right? So I was talking about this UDP that we're building, this unified data platform. This comes after around 5 years of investment, so it's not like the first step that we're taking as part of our data strategy is almost the last, because we began by demonstrating value short term. So we began by showing the power of analytics, of reporting, to enable those data-driven decisions that I was referring to before, and then we build it backwards. So we wanted to demonstrate the value to the end user, first of all internally, and how this impacts the business, and how this translates into new revenue streams, or how it consolidates existing ones, or even how this generates cost efficiencies. But to me, the first thing is to kind of build a case, demonstrate the value, and then afterwards continue the path to make that something more robust and scalable with time.
Okay, exactly, measurable. It has to be measurable. And I want to give you guys an opportunity to say something about this, but also I guess, I mean, how do we measure the emotional impact of what we're doing to the more analytical data? Like, are we looking at how, because again, as I was trying to frame it earlier, I mean, fans, I mean, it's not so rational, like their decisions, like it changes. I think there's a good point. When you lose, things, maybe it's a little too granular to go to that level, but how do we actually look at the emotional impact based compared to that pure data analytical impact? Is there a way you guys are looking at that, or?
It's a very complicated because maybe sometimes we don't want to measure this sense of our fans, but yeah, I think that we need to take advantage of technologies to get this data and to apply all the data we get from this process in order to get value for the fans and for the company itself, because we need to have this mindset about monetize all this data, because it's not only about having data for having itself. It's about how we can direct this data to a specific strategy. No? Okay, we have thousands of fans every 10 days in our facilities, and how we can, again, take advantage of that, how we can listen to our fans, how we can to provide them specific services or products for them in an accurate way. So, but yeah, it's complicated, and I think it's one of the main goals and challenges we have in the sport industry, because if we analyze the sport itself, it's evolving itself. So try to imagine that we need to be so attractive for the new audiences. We are calling them, okay, you need to come to Victoria in January, raining 5 degrees on the streets, and they are coming from their houses to watching Ibai Llanos in Twitch and then playing FIFA. And we need to evolve as a sport entity and providing new experiences itself, in the stadium itself, and to be part of them. So I think this is something that through innovation, we need to detect and to be part of this process.
And Daniel, I want to give you your opportunity real quick. I think that's to what we were hearing in the past panels, that I mean, sometimes you just have to try and fail and keep failing and learning from that. At least that's what they were explaining in years past, and it makes sense, of course. Sometimes we just have to say, well, let's see what happens, because we don't know sometimes what our audience actually wants until we try.
I mean, yeah, there's also, when you look at startups, you have to say, okay, how can you measure if your product is working? It's like put the money where your mouth is, basically. So it's like if somebody puts the credit card in and pays something, you know that they have been engaged. So, and I think the same part happens right now when you look at the data thing. Again, we talked about, again, I'm coming back to organizational excellence. This is where a lot of the sports entities right now sit, but not a lot of them have already risked to go into very disruptive ways of doing fan engagement. And I think there's a couple of nice initiatives out there right now. So for example, when you look at talking about the money cases, fans, if they're engaged, they are also not only buying the ticket to go to the stadium, they could maybe invest in your club. They could invest, and there's like startups out there that do right now the crowdfunding for clubs. So you basically participate in strategic projects of the club. You get some perks, like you get on a normal crowdfunding campaign, but your money stays on this exact investment, and then you get a payback once this money basically increases its value. I'll give you an example. So for example, a club wants to hire or to get a new player on board, and with the help of the fans, they make the acquisition of this new player. This player increases in value, the fan participates in the value increase of this transfer. There's a lot of stuff that you can right now work on, where I think sport organizations have a huge playground to jump a bit out of the, you know, it's very institutional. There's a lot of, let's say, there's a lot of innovation resistance there still in the organizations. But it's also not that you need like maybe the most creative platforms or startup. There's been a club in Spain, they just were doing, let's say, the pitch roulette. So they sold, so to say, each square meter on the pitch. You could bet on this square meter on the soccer pitch, and if some action happened on this square meter, so for example, there was a free kick that ended up in goal, you would win a prize. And so you could buy this square meter, you could bet like on a roulette, And then if something happens there, you get a monetary reward where it's like a huge engagement. Small clubs can do it. You can be very creative, and it doesn't have to be a lot of technology involvement. I think the technology there is then there to measure to the fan engagement and to build it into your strategy. But there is a lot of opportunity out there where you can really hit your fan engagement out of the park, which we don't see so often in the big organizations so far, and hopefully going to see much more in the future.
Okay, I want to move a little bit onto the innovation journey, let's say. And perhaps if you guys would like to draw on some of your own examples, besides just fan engagement, as you wish. But when we talk about the innovation journey, about framing our issues or opportunities, right? I'm an ex-competitive American football player, and a lot of times I draw from my athletic background to think about, like, focus on fundamentals. Like even Messi, before the major championship, is back that week focusing on fundamentals. You guys have kind of touched on it, but maybe highlight a little bit of what your fundamentals are, one part, or if you can. And the second thing, when we talk about integrating the technology or integrating a solution, is this something that you find comes more of a top-down decision? Or is it bottom-up, or is it more middle-out? And middle-out comes more from generated, let's say, even from the fan co-collaboration with you. So I guess there's two parts. A little bit about your fundamentals as you're developing your strategy, short, and then the decision-making process. Whoever.
I have to say that, for example, when we are talking about innovation, and not only in a sports club, in corporate itself, innovation, or the duty of innovate is not focused on an innovation department, on a specific people on this organization. It's a cultural way to change the corporation.
Very nice.
And I think, for example, because this is my 10th year working in the sport industry, because I have been working in clubs like FC Barcelona, Athletic Club, and Baskonia Alaves Group. And when we start discussing or start debating about how we can create an innovation department in a club at FC Barcelona, it was something totally new, because a club was a club. Mm-hmm. And this is the great change in the sport industry. Plus, we are moving from being sports clubs that compete in competition to sports companies that interact in the sport industry. So this is the big leap, or the big change in the industry. So once you have this clear, you need to start convincing the property, the top tier of the organization, that innovation is essential to be better, to have an opportunity to have internally the knowledge to interact with the innovation ecosystem. Mm-hmm. So, for example, in my case, when I developed these 3 innovation departments in these clubs, it's important to convince the top tier, that innovation is something that is going to help you, but not in the short term. I think that is something that is going to measure this impact in the mid or in the long term. But this is essential to have this mindset of change, that and in order to spread this innovation mindset into the organization. Because in our case, for example, when someone from the communication department says, "Okay, I thought this is a product that maybe is going to help us. Is it possible to you to interact with this company?" This is the seat is in this department, yeah. and the need to innovate is not in our department. It's in the whole company.
I like this answer too, because I'm hearing, because we're fans as well. It's not we're fans. We're the fanatics, the consumers as well. Even though you're working within these leagues.
No, I was about to say that I thought was what's spot on with mindset. I think that answers to both of your questions. So it should be a mindset, a culture across the company, and for us it's it should solve a business challenge, right? It should help us strengthen or grow our fan base, our brand, or it should build new revenue streams, consolidate, and in the end, it's either one of these 2 objectives. So there's, of course, more detail to be analyzed, but innovation should be a vehicle to reach our objectives.
Maybe from my point of view, to give you a clear answer to one of your questions, you always need top level to make a project. The question is, how do you get to it? Okay. So there is the way that you can work your way up, and then somehow the CEO gets somehow a voice of your amazing projects, or you have them on board from the beginning. Ideally, you have them on board from the beginning, but it's not always happening, no? So I can tell you a bit of experience, because we don't only work with sport organizations, but also with corporates. We also work with small and medium-sized companies, and it's always the same, basically. So we come in, they have a challenge, they have an opportunity, or maybe they don't even know that they have a challenge, but they know they have to do something. And then there is this kind of exploration phase where they say, okay, whose problem is it actually, and who do I really put on the forefront of this project? And most probably after the first or second meeting, we could directly give them a solution, and they could implement it, and then they would most probably be fine. But it would fail. Because behind business, there's human beings, and you know it. There's a guy comes to you and they, yeah, tomorrow you have been doing this like every day like this. Tomorrow we're going to do this. Like, who are you? You know, like, what? So in the process, whatever the methodology you apply, make sure you have stakeholders, let's say from the core business involved. Make sure it's a process that has them on board, and make sure that they think it's their idea, even if it's not, because they will defend their own idea very heavily, and then you will get an implementation that is quick, that is seamless, and then goes into and ties very much into the different departments. Obviously, there's companies who are more streamlined. There's, when you have the CEO on top, it's a smaller company, you can implement much faster. And sport organizations, they tend to be the most rigid ones, like federations. There's obviously then also, depending on the club structure that you have, you worked for FC Barcelona, you know it's right now for you different, that you have an owner in Baskonia, and FC Barcelona is maybe a different animal. And the guys sitting here from the other clubs, they all know in the structure that they are. But I think this kind of inner politics, you're all experts in it, you know who has to be on board, and I would really recommend whoever does innovation in a club to focus a lot on what is like the internal stakeholder engagement. How do you do it that you not fire a lot of resources and a lot of time, and then you have suddenly, like in a marathon, you are like in kilometer 40 and or 38 and you hit the wall, and then it's done and you're not going to make it to the finish line, no? And then the last recommendation, definitely from all the projects that we have, is like make it something that is cost effective, that a midline manager can sign off quickly. Make it a quick process that shows first results quickly. So you can see if this little bird that you're right now feeding with the worms is like having little wings and can fly, then you can show it to upper management, and then they will give you upwind so this bird can grow and will give you the food for your innovation initiative to really take off and to take a high flight.
Okay, nice. Thank you. I like these answers. We only have a couple minutes left, I guess. So maybe I want to finish with, if you had the opportunity to change one cultural or structural element to help spur innovation, and this could be framed as advice, it doesn't have to be critical, it can be advice, what would that be? Doesn't have to be necessarily for your organization, but just in general, what would you might change to help spur innovation? It can be in general, it doesn't have to be specific to what you're doing in your day-to-day. As advice, I'm trying to get my startup going here.
I guess no one wants to take it because it's a tough question. I would say to keep in mind what we have talked about. So if you're considering a fan initiative, innovating around the fan experience, for instance, I would say put the fan at the center, or keep them at the center, so that everything that you do is or has an end goal, and you have that in mind. And in the meantime, if you want to be innovative, of course, let's be open to new ideas, things that might seem crazy. And I think we have touched on this, depending on the organization that you work on. If you work on a startup or on a 100-year-old club or federation, the pace might be different, the opportunities might be different, but if you, and this is kind of a topic, but are able to think out of the box, sometimes there are ideas that come from there, and sometimes they are just there, but you have lack of the resources to execute on them. So it's, I would say, keeping your eyes open and having in mind what you want to achieve in the end.
Okay.
He takes his time to think.
There's no wrong answer.
So I think like I will just pick up on yours. The one advice is think out of the box. And I will explain this. So we have here sports organization fighting for fan engagement, okay, within some given rules, and then you stick in your box, and these are my rules, this is my playground. Maybe you can get a new playground. Yesterday we had here on the panel sitting someone from Riot Games, I think League of Legends. So we are, just to give you an example, and yesterday I'm picking up on a lot of conversations I already had yesterday. So right now we look at sports, and then we look at esports, which for me, sorry, it's video gaming is not a sport, sorry, my personal opinion. So there is a huge opportunity of why don't you think out of the box and you bring, let's say, esports and the real sports together. One example that is a project, just for reference, there is a project in South Korea, it's called Heido, where they did dodgeball with augmented reality. Imagine you create new sports, and without the framework of FIFA, UEFA, and other rights holders, you are the right holder of a new sport. The technology is there. Yesterday we discussed a glass floor technology that you can do, like you don't need even the glasses anymore for the augmented reality, and you are the right owner of a new sport. You build your own franchise, and you build and hit new fan segments that right now you're not tapping into, because your normal sports maybe doesn't hit the threshold of attention for a guy who sits on the Riot Games League of Legends tournament and fills a stadium, but will for sure if you come up with a value proposition that hits him. So think out of the box. I think the technology is there. There's two tested, or a lot of grounds are already tested, and maybe take a small little risk to then provide new added value also to your sponsors, and to stick the neck out and see, okay, well, how is the air up here, you know, where maybe nobody tested so far and where I'm not benchmarking anything against any competitor.
Perfect. I have to say that, for example, when we are thinking about innovation, I think you need to be practical. And you need to apply this innovation, because innovation, you have this theoretical concept about basic innovation and applied innovation. And in order to start convincing internally what is important about having this innovation department or believe in this innovation strategy, I think you need to be practical, try to find these quick wins, how you can impact in the business. And I think this is very important. And in our case, it's important to start this kind of conversation with the startups, how we can monetize our assets and create these frameworks with the startups in order to co-develop with them a new service, a new product, or even how we can improve the existing product. But again, having these quick wins in the best time for the companies is essential, because it's a way to be a believer in innovation. And then when you start with this kind of strategy, it's going to be easy to increase this strategy behind innovation.
Okay. Our time is done. I guess I'm just thinking back now in the 4 sessions I've had, and maybe I'm going to offer a challenge, and not to you guys specifically, just in general. I just think the fan experience, I hope we can continue to put that more and more at the center of what we're doing with innovation in sports. I mean, you see some of the radical integrations of technology in sports that's improved the fan, and you brought up esports, and it makes me think of that. You could talk about Hollywood movies and how the camera angles from Hollywood movies, there's so much that come into sports to improve the fan engagement, and I just feel like there's much more we could be doing with our fan engagement. And again, I don't mean you guys specifically, I'm thinking of other specific brands in general, but I just offer that challenge to people, like let's push that envelope a little bit more of fan engagement. But that's my own personal. Thank you very much to this panel. I hope you guys enjoyed your time, and thank you all for listening. And we'll see you next year, I hope. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Thank you, speakers.